Hello, Dr. Charlie Metcalf here, another book review for you. Right now I'm looking at An Unhurried Life. An Unhurried Life by Alan Fadling. There's no E on the end, so Fadling, I guess. An Unhurried Life, following Jesus' rhythms of work and rest. So a couple things here. It's a great reminder for us. It's a truth that our culture needs to hear, that we should be different than the world if we're following Jesus, that he wasn't hurried. It's a great title, like An Unhurried Life. Like, okay, what's that look like? And man, what would it mean to live an unhurried life and to experience that? It's got a great just cover. So you got a great, like, the title could sell the book, the cover could sell the book as well. You've got like the speedboat going across the bottom, life in the fast lane type deal versus like the little paper boat just kind of resting, going along with the flow. So anyhow, it's easy to see, after reading the book, it's easy to see how it was a Christianity Today winner. So this is a winner of the Christianity Today Book Award of Merit in Spirituality. And it's easy to see how it was. It was a pretty good book. Just a reminder to slow down, to be with God. It's got some neat practical applications in there, which is good for us. And then overall, just this idea of to live more fully and deeply in an unhurried communion with Christ, and being able to walk with Christ and serve with Christ and work with him. And that idea of walking with Christ, so like not falling behind him, not running out in front of him, but just walking with him. Just glance at my notes here. This is I gave a shout out to the Padres last time. I've got like the Colorado Rockies, purple and black here. So anyhow, a little chapter flow for you. Again, states the problem, opens up with this frantic life that we live, the pace of our life, and then the church isn't that much different, which is sad. And so, sometimes the church can be the same as the world. So here he says, hey, we should be able to live as an unhurried apprentice. And there's a great quote about, like, don't talk trust and then live worry, right? Don't talk trust and live worry. So if we're going to go ahead and talk about trust all the time, we should be able to live that. He talks about ways to measure success. The other thing about the book as a whole, I felt like it was more geared towards people in ministry. And maybe that's just because I am in ministry, but like if I read it, like I'd gift it to another pastor, and I think they do it. And a lot of the examples he gives is from being in ministry. So one of the things he talks about, like what's it look like to measure success and what that looks like in the church. And to me, like I always talk about like the ABCs of church growth and how it's just junk as far as attendance, buildings, cash, right? And that's the only things they care about, attendance, buildings, and cash. So we're going to look at the numbers of attendance. We're going to look at the buildings we can build and the campuses, and welcome to our North Campus, South Campus, East Campus, whatever. And then C's being our cash position or whatever. And I've been at services where like during the announcement time, like they're going to review all three of those things and talk about it. So one thing that I thought was great and often guilty of in the church is teaching what to obey versus how to obey it. So I think a lot of times in Christian discipleship, like we know what to obey, right? We know the commandments, we know the Beatitudes, we know Matthew 25 and what it means to feed the hungry and to give drink to the thirsty and to visit those in prison, whatever. But like, how do you do that? And I think that's really where we need that one-on-one discipleship, that one-on-one apprentice model to learn how to obey the commandments. I always liken it, there's a Rodney Clapp book that talks about this and the application of it. And like you can have a physics lesson to a bunch of kids talking about how to ride a bicycle, right? And sit them in a classroom and explain the being able to go how fast and the angles that you need to take and all this stuff. But really, like, to teach a kid how to learn a bike, what do? You put them on the bike, right? You guide them. You show them how it's done. You hold the seat and kind of show them what balance looks like and show them how to turn and lean and how to turn it. So, you don't want an academic class on how to ride a bike for a kid. You want to be able to go out and ride a bike with them. And so some of that practical learning on how to obey. One of the things in student ministry, I had a great mentor that taught me, he's like, hey, take students with you to run errands with, right? And so as you're running up to Home Depot and grabbing something, like they're seeing how you interact with other people. You're being able to show them what being a Christian in contemporary culture looks like. So it has a chapter on productivity, being able to savor the present, something that we're not very good at sometimes, living in the past or looking towards the future. That we can be busy in ministry and not fruitful, and so that's another thing I think is important there. Goes through a chapter on temptation, and really the temptation to try to hurry God's plans along. He does deal with Jesus' temptation. Talks about how living an unhurried life leads to more care. He says that hurry glances, but love gazes and often stays and acts. And I think that's true, that we're more prone to help someone out, to spend more time with someone, to love someone if we're not hurried along. And so, for us to be able to live a life that we open ourselves up to doing that. And I think about, just the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? Like the priests, they're too fast running down the side of the road, got to get somewhere, got to get to the temple, got to do this, and they leave someone on the side of the road that needs help. And that we're more prone to do the same thing. That I'm like, man, I'd love to help them, but I got to get here instead. It has a chapter on prayer. Talks about praying as leadership. I think that's important, especially in ministry. Chapter on rest talks about Jesus' yoke being easy and what a yoke is and how that works. Also gives the Hebrew day pattern. That's another John Ortberg thing that I learned, that for the Hebrews, for the Jewish people in the Old Testament, like it starts off with evening. Like when the sun goes down, that's the beginning of the day. And then when you wake up, you're joining with God in the morning in a day that's already in place. So kind of a neat thing there. He'll talk about Sabbath. And then another ministry application. Like I said, he's got a bunch of ministry applications, which is why I said that it's kind of geared that way. He says Sabbath requires surrender. If we only stop when we are finished with all our work, we will never stop because our work is never completely done. Sabbath dissolves the artificial urgency of our days because it liberates us from the need to be finished. And I just think about this and really in a lot of different jobs that aren't, hourly punch the clock in and out type thing, that work is never done. There's always something more that we could be doing, there's another contact to make, there's another, article to write, whatever, you find yourself in vocationally. It talks about suffering and the idea of pruning and what that looks like and being able to be pruned by God. Also talks about maturity and this idea that it takes time to grow. There's no microwave spirituality, the importance of prayer in that time of growth. And to me, there's a Eugene Peterson book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And he talks about this growth of spirituality that happens over time, that we can't rush it. And oftentimes we tend to compare ourselves, our spiritual life, to these older people that have been Christians longer than we have. We're like, hey, how come I can't pray like them? Or how come I don't study my Bible like them? Or how come I don't have that type of faith in hard times? Well, it's time that's built over them. They're further along in the journey than you. So it does take time to mature. And then, okay, so how do you measure that growth, right? Well, this is, one of his emphasis is it's not on the things we know, it's on who and how we love. It's on who and how we love. And that's why I tell people, like, you're not going to take a quiz on the Bible. And the Bible knowledge and being in the quote chapters and verses don't impress me as much as being able to apply those chapters and verses. So go through, try to apply those things to find out how God wants us to love, who he wants us to love, and do that. He talks about different ways that the church packages spiritual growth as far as new programming or like, oh, we hired a new pastor of spiritual direction or whatever. So versus kind of the hard work of maturing. He does give spiritual practices here, extended personal communion time with God kind of retreats. And one of the things, this is very doable, I think. So many times we hear, oh, you should be able to take a day each month and be able to commune with God and set it aside or whatever. Here he talks about half days. And when I read that, I'm like, you know what? Like, yes, I could schedule a 4-hour time period to have extended communion with God and be able to start small, like start with what is achievable versus things that aren't achievable. So good stuff there. A third rule, being able to apply the teaching. So if you're teaching on prayer, spend a third of the time actually praying with people, being able to walk, unplug, sleep, What else? Oh, this is a great quote. He says, "What if instead of a roadmap, God is offering to be my guide?" So many times we want God like, "Hey, give me the map and I'll follow it," versus God saying, "Hey, I want to walk with you on this journey." So I thought that was a great one because God does offer to be our guide. He closes with a chapter on eternal life, just kind of our ongoing mutual relationship with the one who is life. Overall, great book, great reminder on just slowing down. Page 186, he says, "Hurry becomes a veil that obscures the Lord's grandeur and beauty." And I think that's true in our lives, that we need to take time to slow down, to just be with God. And so reading the book, it's neat because I forced myself not to read through it quickly, right? I was going to spend time slowly reading on each chapter. And each chapter closes with application questions. And so, you'd feel guilty trying to read through and then rush through the questions and get to the next chapter versus, hey, take your time, read through those questions, reflect on those questions, answer them. They'll help you out along the way. So anyhow, another great read for you. Alan Fadling, An Unhurried Life. If the video helped you, you could subscribe. I put out these videos not on a regular basis at this current time, so every now and then you'll have a little email pop in your inbox. Hey, there's a new video waiting for you. If it brought value to you, give me a little thumbs up, help me out there, and it helps to the algorithm for YouTube share it with other people. So anyhow, hope you have a great day, and we'll see you later.